Close shave for Bolivia's President Evo Morales as his helicopter makes an emergency landing. It's the Super Monday of mass protests in Chile against the Sebastian Piñera-led administration. And Argentina's President-elect Alberto Fernandez meets with President Andrés Manuel López Obrador in Mexico. Hello and welcome to Telesur English. I am Estefania Bravo. This is from the South. The helicopter carrying Bolivia's President Evo Morales had to make an emergency landing this Monday afternoon. In a statement, the Bolivian Air Force explained that the presidential helicopter encountered a mechanical failure shortly after it took off from the country's Colquiri municipality. Eyewitnesses say they observed the aircraft suddenly plunge mid-air, dropping an estimated 15 meters. The pilot was forced to land in a flat, open area in Colquiri. President Morales, although shaken up, escaped unharmed. In fact, no one was injured in the incident. The flight was en route to the Oruro region in the west of the country. President Morales took to Twitter to confirm that no one was injured in the accident. He thanked, quote, God and the Pachamama that everyone is okay. He also thanked everyone for expressing their solidarity. Our correspondent, Freddy Morales, has more from La Paz.
We are in the House of the People, the seat of government in Bolivia, waiting for a report on the meetings that President Evo Morales has been holding with representatives of various sectors. Evo Morales arrived here after an incident with a helicopter which was due to take him from a mining center to the city of Oruro. According to the Air Force, there was a problem with the tail rotor on the helicopter, which forced it to make an emergency landing, just after it had taken off. As it was making this emergency landing, the tail rotor hit a billboard and was damaged further. The Air Force has already opened an investigation into the incident, in line with its normal protocols. As far as the general political situation is concerned, the experts of the OAS and 5 other countries are continuing their work on the electoral audit. The political opposition has definitely decided not to take part in this audit, nor has it handed over to these international experts any evidence of the fraud which it claims took place, so that the experts could evaluate those claims of fraud. The Bolivian government has made clear that the results of the audit will be binding, and that they will be ready in a maximum of 12 days. That means that the government is committed to accepting and acting on whatever conclusions and suggestions come out of this audit.
We thank Freddy Morales for that report. Anti-government protests in Chile are into their 17th day as citizens reject the administration of President Sebastian Piñera. Demonstrators are calling for the dismantling of the neoliberal state, a constituent assembly to formulate a new constitution to substitute that which was approved under the Western-backed military dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet, and the resignation of President Piñera. The demonstrations have been met with massive repression and the criminalization of the right to protest. Today, high school students added their way to the demonstrations, walking out of classes. The Chilean National Human Rights Institution said that as of November 3rd, 4,364 people had been detained and 1,659 people had been hospitalized. However, the Red Cross recorded almost twice that figure. Meanwhile, a tremor has shocked the country. In an effort to demobilize the demonstrations, President Piñera has demanded the immediate resignation of the National Assets Minister, Alejandra Bravo. Last week, Piñera announced changes to his cabinet to a similar end, but most positions were simply reshuffled. Meanwhile, Guatemalan Nobel Peace Prize winner Rigoberta Menchú has said she is in the country to support the decisions made by the Chilean people. Menchú addressed students and faculty at Chile University, saying that everyone in Chilean society should be involved in the political reforms being demanded by protesters across the country. She also said that undoing the established political landscapes of the last 50 years will be very difficult.
It's true that at times reforming the law article by article can create further problems. It's easier to create a new system with one reform in which everyone in society participates, but it's going to be very difficult to undo everything done in the last 50 years, over the past century. You all know this. We're here to support what you decide. We are victims of the past. I'm a victim of the Guatemalan genocide in the past. We cannot allow those days to return. That's the first thing that came to my head when I came to Chile from Guatemala, that the past does not happen again, because nobody wants that cruelty inflicted again on new generations.
Moving on, Argentina's President-elect Alberto Fernandez has been speaking after his meeting with President Andrés Manuel López Obrador in Mexico City.
I am living more than happy with the reception I received from the President, and that is absolutely reciprocal. I also offered him my support. I hope the same happens tonight with the businessmen I am meeting, because Argentina needs investment. We already have a lot of investment from Mexico, and we hope there is much more to come.
Earlier, the Mexican president said he hoped to strengthen commercial ties between Mexico and Argentina.
We will try as much as we can to increase our imports of Argentine goods so that the people of Argentina with their new government will be able to tackle the economic crisis and there can be growth and welfare in Argentina.
President López Obrador also dismissed claims made by a retired Army General, Gaitán Ochoa, that a coup is on the horizon. The president said the allegation was baseless.
Nobody thinks that there are any conditions for a state coup. None at all. No such thing even exists. Let us not be fooled and led astray.
Staying in Mexico, hundreds have marched in Mexico City to demand an end to gender-based violence and femicides. Victims' parents turn out during the traditional Day of the Dead celebrations to remember their lost daughters and to call for an end to impunity. According to official figures, over 1,000 women were killed in Mexico between January and May of this year, with nearly half of them being victims of gender-based violence. Moving on, Iraqi security forces have fired live ammunition at anti-government protesters in Baghdad. About 12 people were wounded after police opened fire on demonstrators gathered near a state TV station. Protests have become increasingly dramatic over the past few weeks as police have on many occasions fired live ammunition on crowds. The death toll from this violent repression has reached above 270 people. Protesters are calling for a complete overhaul of the political system, saying leaders are out of touch with the realities of everyday citizens.
The civil disobedience campaign is a constitutional right. Why don't the United Nations come and see the crimes? We lost more than 200 martyrs and more 16,000 injured. Where are the United Nations? Where is the humanity? Why don't they rescue us? We got very tired to the point of desperation.
And the incident in Baghdad follows the death of 3 protesters who were shot overnight during a demonstration outside the Iranian consulate in Iraq's holy city of Karbala. Security forces fired live ammunition to disperse protesters, tried to scale the walls of the consulate in the southern city to set fire to the building. More than 250 people have been killed since anti-government rallies broke out in Iraq on October 1st, but officials have stopped providing casualty numbers. Coming up after the break, parts of Guyana have been affected by flooding due to spring tides and hazardous seas. Stay with us.
The life is full of moments. Moments of fight. Moments of hope. Moments that transcend. Moments that you can live in. Telesur documentaries. Sundays. Only on Telesur.
anti-imperialist solidarity meeting for democracy and against neoliberalism concluded in Cuba on Sunday with the approval of a plan against the interference of the United States and for the upholding the international law. It also expressed solidarity with the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and called for the immediate release of former Brazilian President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva. The Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel reaffirmed that U.S. policies in Latin America are intended to stop any progressive movement in the region.
Latin America and the Caribbean suffer from the return of the Monroe Doctrine and the worst practices of McCarthyism. Imperialist policies are applied to our nations on top of an uncontrolled sequence of interventionist actions that the current U.S. administration has unleashed since it came to power. The President of the United States and his court of ruffians lash out against the Cuban Revolution, the Bolivarian Revolution, the Sandinista Revolution, the Forum of Sao Paulo, and the political leaderships of Brazil, Bolivia, and Argentina's left wing, and the social, popular, and progressive movements throughout our region that they consider to be their backyard.
Also speaking at the summit, the Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro called his Salvadorian counterpart Nayib Bukele a puppet of imperialism in response to the expulsion of Venezuela's diplomatic staff from El Salvador.
Dear Conrad Salvador Sánchez Seren, a revolutionary leader of Central America, former president of El Salvador, not a buffoon or a puppet of imperialism like Nayib Bukele, will separate the peoples of Salvador and Venezuela. Bukele, whoever messes with us, they lose. You will dry up, Bukele. It's embarrassing to see someone who became president with the hope of Salvadoran people in their hands melt in front of imperialism. But history is history, and history will not save you, Bukele. You earn your place as a traitor and push over to imperialism, just like that.
Meanwhile, in delivering his Independence Day message, Dominica's Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit expressed solidarity with the people of Venezuela as he thanked them for their support over the years.
I thought fondly of our good relationship with the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, who sent personnel and equipment to our shores and who provided the funding for the expansion of the airport, and who has supported the people of Dominica in so many ways, in housing, with Petrocaribe, and with our social projects. Mr. Ambassador, we will always be eternally grateful to the government and people of Venezuela, and we pledge our continued support to you as you continue to struggle to overcome your challenges and return Venezuela to a prosperous country for the benefit of all its citizens.
On Sunday, thousands gathered to celebrate the anniversary of Dominica's 41st independence. Many dressed in traditional Creole wear as they observed the military parade by police and the armed forces. Dominica is celebrating under this year's theme, saluting resilience and rejuvenation 2 years on. This as the island continues to recover from devastation caused by Hurricane Maria in 2017 and tropical storms Matthew and Erica in 2016 and 2015, respectively.
This country has survived Maria. We have shown that our people are resilient, that Dominica is coming back bigger and better, and that we can and will transform Dominica into the first climate resilient country. Because I must say to you that climate change is real. The refusal or failure of industrialized countries to change harmful practices that is causing the warming of our planet will continue to feed more frequent and ferocious storms our way.
Still in the Caribbean region, parts of Guyana have been affected by flooding due to spring tides at hazardous seas. Reports say coastal areas have been most affected, with water overtopping the Georgetown seawall. Spring tides were reported in September, but on October 26, residents from Dancing to Fairfield were impacted. The tide rose quickly, leaving them with no time to prepare. Officials have given out relief hampers as a temporary assistance. LGBTQI people and other marginalized groups from 7 Eastern Caribbean islands have announced their intention to challenge the constitutionality of buggery and indecently laws in Barbados, St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua and Barbuda, Grenada, and St. Lucia. The Eastern Caribbean Alliance for Diversity and Equality is expected to file the claims before the end of the year. It contends that the laws, which are remnants of a colonial past, contribute to stigmatization of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex people, while they also legitimize hate speech, discrimination, and violence. Adult consensual and same-sex intimacy is criminalized in 9 Caribbean countries, all of which are members of the Commonwealth. In Uruguay, presidential candidates Daniel Martinez and Luis Lacalle Pou have begun to campaign ahead of the runoff vote set for November 24th. Under the slogan "Vote to Vote," candidate to the Broad Front Party, Daniel Martinez visited several outskirts of the capital Montevideo over the weekend. Meanwhile, National Party candidate Luis Lacalle Pou is calling for the support of all the opposition parties with the promise of forming a coalition government if he is elected. In the first round of the election, Martinez gained 39.2% of votes, while Lacalle Pou secured 28.6%. Moving on, the standoff between Iran and the United States has reached appalling levels as the Trump administration maintains its sanctions campaign. Although Iran has shown commitment to nuclear talks, the U.S. continued embargo on Tehran has jeopardized the opportunity. The Trump administration has announced a new set of sanctions against the general staff of Iran's armed forces and 9 other individuals. Iranian leaders have reiterated they were not going to commit to any talks as long as the U.S. maintains its foreign policy double standards. Meanwhile, Iran has increased its uranium enrichment program in the midst of a continued onslaught by the United States. The country has announced that it has increased more than tenfold its enriched uranium production. Iran has taken a series of steps back from commitments made under a 2015 nuclear deal. Tehran decided in May to suspend certain commitments under the accord, a year after Donald Trump withdrew from the deal and reimposed sanctions in the Islamic Republic.
We must thank the enemy too for bringing about this opportunity to show the mighty of the Islamic Republic of Iran, especially in the nuclear industry. They showed us how we could achieve this in such a period of time.
Coming up after the break, Nigeria's government announces the country's borders will remain closed to trade until February of 2020. Stay with us.
Who's moving the chess man? What interests motivate the actors behind each event? The board is deployed there. Critical move. Investigates every event from Monday to Friday. Only on Telesur.
Welcome back to From the South. In Africa, Sudan's Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok has made a maiden trip to the country's war-torn Darfur region. During his trip, Hamdok, who took office after long-time leader Omar al-Bashir was kicked out of office by months of protests, has pledged to work with the people of Darfur to end the 16-year war that has killed more than 300,000 people and millions displaced. The Darfur conflict broke out in 2003 when the Sudan Liberation Movement rebel group took up arms against the Arab-dominated government, which they accused of neglecting and repressing non-Arab citizens.
Let's work together to achieve peace in Darfur. Our second priority in this transitional period is to fix the economic crisis. We are experiencing on a daily basis the suffering of all our people across Sudan.
Political parties in Guinea-Bissau have started campaigning for the upcoming presidential elections. The presidential elections, which will take place on the 24th of November, are happening at a time when the country is still in a power struggle between outgoing President José Mario Vaz and his government. The president recently dissolved the government and fired the country's prime minister. A delegation of the 15-nation economic community of West African states ordered him to revoke the measure. However, Vaz has defended his decision.
It is a total lack of respect, a lack of dignity, that I, as President of the Republic, issue a decree and that someone dares to tell me that it is a false decree, justifying the end of my mandate. We will see who is really the President of the Republic.
Nigeria's government has said the country's borders will remain closed to trade until February of 2020. The West African nation closed its land borders in August as part of efforts to curb smuggling of goods into the country. Regional trade bodies have called the move retrogressive and a drawback in efforts to increase intra-Africa trade, but Abuja says the move is necessary to protect the country's industries, which are being negatively affected by smuggling. Moving on, Spain's 5 prime minister candidates are set to engage in a televised debate ahead of Sunday's general elections. The election comes after Pedro Sánchez, Spain's acting Socialist Party prime minister, could not form a government after general elections in April. This is the first time when 5 candidates running for elections take part in such a debate, and they are expected to explain how they plan to solve the current Spanish political challenges. Our correspondent in Madrid, Eduardo Marín, has the details.
We are set to witness the only presidential debate where all the candidates will be present. Leader of the right-wing Vox Party, Santiago Abascal, will make his first appearance in this type of debates. It will be broadcast by a public TV station and some private TV stations as well. The debate will be divided into 5 blocks where candidates will touch on topics such as social policies, foreign policy, democracy, among others. This is an opportunity for undecided voters to choose who to vote for. Another debate will take place on November 7, where women from different political parties will discuss similar issues. The elections are expected to take place on November 10.
We thank Edu for that report. Moving on, demonstrators are protesting across the whole of Catalonia against the arrival of the Spanish king. Protesters waving Republican and Catalan Estelada flags blocked access to a number of key roads in the capital, Barcelona. The king's visit comes while the region sees constant protests against the Spanish Supreme Court sentence of up to 13 years for 9 civic and political leaders over their role in a referendum on Catalonia's independence from Spain. A July investigation conducted by the Spanish newspaper El Confidencial revealed that 74% of Catalans are opposed to the monarchy. Hundreds of people protested in Madrid, Spain on Monday against a court ruling last week that cleared 5 men of gang raping a 14-year-old girl and instead found them guilty of the lesser charge of sexual abuse. Barcelona's High Court sentenced the 5 on Thursday to 10 to 12 years in prison, saying that the 2016 assault was not a rape because the victim, who was drunk and unconscious, could neither agree to nor oppose the sexual relations. The judge said that the attack on the 14-year-old girl in the city of Manresa near Barcelona was extremely severe, especially denigrating, and what's more, was against a minor in a situation of distress. But Spanish law doesn't legally recognize rape unless physical violence or intimidation is employed. The socialist government has appointed a panel to review the penal code, particularly the law relating to sexual abuse and assault.
Well, it's clear they have to change either the judges or the law or both. I assume both, because if a 14-year-old girl is unconscious because she drank or any other reason, it doesn't matter. And she's raped by 5 people or 4 because one is masturbating, to put it bluntly. And there are judges who say that is abuse. I found that incredible.
Russians have celebrated the country's National Unity Day. Thousands of people marched in the capital Moscow and other towns to celebrate the day, while President Vladimir Putin laid a wreath for the monument for the 2 Russian heroes who led an army in 1612 to expel Polish factions who wanted to seize the Russian throne. The Unity Day was created by Putin in 2005 to replace the Day of a Bolshevik Revolution that had been celebrated on the 7th of November during Soviet times. In France, residents of a Paris neighborhood that is set to be demolished to make way for the Paris 2024 Olympics Village have appealed to the government to find an alternative site for the Olympics project. According to the residents, the inconvenience that will be caused to the dozens of residents who will have their homes demolished outweighs the benefits that the project will bring to the area. The project, which will house more than 15,000 athletes and officials, is being built in the Saint-Denis area, north of Paris, which for years has suffered from high poverty levels and neglection by authorities.
We will have to suffer the inconvenience caused by the construction site throughout the duration of the work. And it's a tiny piece of land, stuck between Saint-Denis and Saint-Ouen, on which they want to pile up 300 residents like cattle or bags. So it's really unacceptable. It's humiliating.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.
A review of the world news that investigates, incites analysis, and induces criticism, because every event has a context.
Pusimos el punto en la I.
Dotting the I. Saturdays, only on Telesur.